Welcome to another Yap session from Schmoopydady. I am joined by two friends in the Hearthstone community, one NHL fan and one TomCarter. They're going to help teach an idiot me how to use HSguru to the fullest of its potential, and convince me whether or not I'm going to go and shell out for premium stats or not. NHL, do you want to give a little intro about what you used to do in the community? Because I feel like people who know you know, but like people outside, like someone like Mizell would be like, I don't know Wild Micro Celebrity 137. So can you explain what you used to do for the community that they might not know?
For a while I was trying. Well, it first started years ago. I was kind of high ranks, and at the time, WoW became this kind of microcosm of community members where everyone in like the top 150 or so ranks all knew each other because we were the only ones that would ever play, and that's all we faced. And through that, I made a ton of friends, including Schmoopy, one of them, believe it or not. And I also made friends with some of the Tempo Storm guys. And Rotted, who was the team lead at the time, actually brought me in. So I wrote for Tempo Storm for a few years, and then I ended up taking his spot as the writer for the Thoughts and Observations, where we give an idea on the entire overall meta picture. So I did a lot of that. Reynad decided that having us around was competition, and we were too good at our jobs. So he got rid of Tempo Storm, and now he's focused on explaining why pay to win is a slur. But
love that. Among other weird things that Raidnad now does. But like
yes,
so for the longest time, I remember Keith Numbers was writing the foreword, and then when Keith packed it in streaming in Hearthstone, you became the person who was actually writing the foreword. So the last couple of reports, if people
um,
are reading them, you're the one who wrote that, right? For I believe for Wild and Standard, was that true?
so what happened was it was Keith at first. Keith retired, then Rotted took that spot, and then Rotted retired, and I took it in Wild for Rotted.
And
And then
then
for
they retire
Standard,
you.
we had someone step down, and they needed help. And this was like I want to say 2 years ago or so. And so I was like, hey, I also play Standard. I can help. So I worked with Earth and Banter on the Standard report for a little while too.
All right. So like you and contrary to popular belief, because I feel like Tempo sort of got like thrown under the bus a little bit as far as just like, well, they do things on feels. Like you guys obviously looked at data and looked at win rates and would peruse a site like HSguru and filter for certain things to learn things about the meta. Like that was always kind of like overstated in the community from like damage that was done from a previous sort of like regime of how they ran Tempo Storm, right? Like that's like
Yeah.
what resource would you guys look at?
So before Rotted and company, the Tempest Storm Snapshot on the Wild side was a bit of a mess. I'm not gonna name any names or point fingers, but there was a reason why he was brought in. And he helped clean things up and set things straight. There were some players that just weren't even legend players at the time before him. So it took a lot of recovery and stuff. Uh, our problem with the snapshot is not too different from what a lot of players and readers thought, actually. Um, we were tasked with making a one-size-fits-all tier list, right? So we have to appeal to both high-ranked players and low-ranked players. And in a game like Hearthstone, where skill matters with a lot of decks, and you can see these decks shift as you climb up the ranks, it's
Skill
very difficult
matters?
to believe it or not.
What?
Yeah, I know.
What?
Maybe. Okay. Well, Wild is all lucky trash, but
I
some people
didn't
are
mean to
lucky as
derail
well.
you, but like it absolutely does, and that bears out. I mean, I know Filterphobe even shared in Discord this shocking stat that the zombie Chow Uther OTK Pally falls off by a win rate of something like 17% from like Diamond to Legend
Yep.
to like actual like top 1K Legend. Like it goes from being a 57% win rate deck, a very climbable deck, to 40. Like it just becomes like virtually unplayable. So like obviously there's something that changes the higher you go up the ladder. I didn't mean to derail you. Sorry. So you can
No.
continue.
Yeah, so with all of that in mind, it was very difficult for us to piece together a snapshot that all of us were happy with. We always had to make compromises. There were valid criticisms from the community about different things, and sometimes we would even have to take guesses and risks because we had to work almost a week in advance on these things. So we had to predict oftentimes where the meta would go, and sometimes a deck would just show up and we had no idea, and we would still have to publish. And sometimes it really sucked, but you do with what you have, and that's what we did.
Yeah, and I thought you guys did a good job, and I thought you always built into, and I usually I was trying to like translate for you guys on the reports. I know when I did my stuff and I'd read a report, I wouldn't always agree with where you guys landed with things, but I would always try to remind what you guys were trying to approach is you were not always trying to like vault a new deck up right away to this high win rate. Sometimes you would sort of slow roll it and leave it at like tier 2 and be like, hey, listen, it could be better than this, but like we need to see a little bit more before we push it up. Sometimes and almost it was like a policy of like let this breathe for a little longer before we probably put it where it belongs. But you would acknowledge that it might deserve to be higher. So I always thought there was like some things to read between the lines, and that you could use a little bit of an imagination and like read the tea leaves as like hey, this is kind of looking in the past, but also like they're under certain constraints when they put this report together. Before we go too far though and get too far in the weeds, I do want to give Tom an opportunity to introduce himself. TomCarter is also here, who is also a funny data guy. Tom, do you want to give us some background about you as a player for people who might not know who you are?
Sure. I didn't do much work related to Hearthstone. I just played too much, and and as NHL, a little bit later than him, I joined the club of being on the top 150 or so, and everyone knew each other, and that's how I made Keith, you, NHL,
Sorry.
and so many more. And related to data, as we were talking about, I think it's relevant for what we're doing to be doing today. Um, my and I actually think this is one of the, if not the pinnacle of my Hearthstone career, uh, pissing you off NHL with Egg Hunter stats. Because I was the only little shit playing that deck, and it looked real, and then all of the stats showed it was only me and one other person on HS Ripple giving the two-player requirement for the data to show up. So amazing. Um, and same with HSguru. I created my own data. So yeah.
You create your own data, but
Amazing.
not only you create your own data, you like perusing data. This is like a hobby for you too. I know in the past you've looked for like unplayable decks that have found ways to pop up in HSguru, or just like funny cards. Like, hey, what lists do we have that use X card, and brought them to stream. So you've used you've used HSguru in a little bit more of an advanced setting than I'd say like your average Hearthstone user, I would think.
Yeah, and same with HS Ripple, because my issue is that I don't like, and I know that it's a really useful skill when you learn um, which cars are good and which cars are not. And instead, what I do is I bash my head against the wall 500 times in a row, and I see what sticks. So that's the other reason that I really like data. It's because I did the thing where I play at least like 50 games with a combination of certain cars, and then I pull up my own data from HSguru and HS Replay, and I'm like, okay, what is the win rate of this card on my mulligan if I draw it?
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's one of the things that I think when I look at HSguru, like the mulligan numbers make no sense to me. I know like higher number is good, and maybe that's just it, but like I don't. I don't know. I'm gonna need a little bit of help with deciphering that.
Yeah, and I get some numbers make no sense. I just take the screenshot when it's like a high number and that's it. But I don't know. Where do you wanna
Yeah, so
like gotta jump in
so
where we do the
let's start with
Oh,
just
go ahead.
like the basic function of like, okay, so like responsible filtering for decks on HSguru. What settings should I look for? What let's say I'm brand new to the site. Somebody's just giving me this link and I'm playing around with it. Where is like just a starter kit? Where should I start when I start filtering for things if I want to find a good deck to use, or what settings do you guys use in particular as people who are experienced in using the site?
For
You
me,
wanna go NHL?
yeah, for me personally, I go straight to the meta tab. I don't try anything else. I don't go through decks. I go straight to the meta tab. I am a meta slave.
All right. So we have gone to the meta tab, and with the default settings, sorry for the pop-ups, chat. You're just gonna have to suck it up. Yeah, I don't have a pop-up blocker. I'm a boomer. So I've gone to the meta tab, and according to the meta tab, Libram Paladin is the stone cold nuts. I should get Libram Paladin. I should craft it in gold. Highest win rate, good, right? Or is there more that we have to do?
So it depends on your rank.
Right.
No,
Depends
no, no.
greatly on your rank,
Wait.
first of all.
So the site has multiple tabs. You have decks, meta, and cards. Those would be the main ones that we would be looking at. And then you have sub tabs. We need the main tabs, which is those that are those at the top. Pass, Wild, Diamond Legend, Opponent Class, and minimum amount of games. Um, does it depend on what NHL said? Yes, but those filters are already, in my opinion, important enough because as we were discussing earlier with the tempo report, you have something that appeals to all, but you know that your meta may be different. So in this case, you already know that you're looking at Diamond through Legend, right? So you may want to change that to just be Legend,
Is Diamond
because you are.
Diamond through Legend, does that include Legend players as well in the data, or is that like if Diamond right up until like the Diamond won 3 stars, and if you're in Legend, you bounce out of it?
It includes all of Legend and all of Diamond.
Okay. Okay, got you. And so the
Yeah.
all would be everybody way down to bronze included. Okay.
Yes.
From Legend to
Yeah. So
So I think that you want to change that at the very least to be Legend, maybe 5K or 1K at the very least.
Yeah.
It
For
depends on what
you,
you
at
want.
least, where you play.
Yeah. Yeah, for you, Schmoopy, I would change it to top 1K, but for any normal player, the Diamond through Legend might be fine.
Oh no, yeah, no, Diamond through Legend is fine, but Shmoopy started with the question that Libram Paladin is the nuts. Hold on, maybe not for you. That is where we were looking at the delta difference between Uther OTK. So yeah, as you can see, Libram Paladin falls off at least by like what was that, 7% win rate?
yeah,
Yes.
it went from, where was it? Hold on. Sorry. Diamond through Legend, it was 61.1% win rate. Top 1K, it's looking at 54.7, and Call to Arms Paladin gets past it. Follow-up question. These games, which server is this pulling from? Is it only pulling from NA, EU? Does China leak in as well? How do I know what I'm looking at?
So this is all servers, I believe. As long as you use Firestone or Donkey's Hearthstone Deck Tracker plugin, then your games are being uploaded to this site.
Got you. Okay.
For most CN server players, they're not going to be using those pieces of software, so their games are probably not going to be here, but that doesn't really matter because servers are just to group regions and give you better load times. They don't have individual metas. they all have more or less the same meta, except for
Yeah.
some weird exceptions, which aren't really worth talking about because they're pretty rare.
Yeah, like
On a
you.
side note,
Go ahead. Sorry.
the meta tab on the site doesn't have a region. I believe that if we go to the decks and or cards tab, it may have a region, or it used to.
Leaderboard has a region, but that
No, but
would have
that's
a
just
region.
the
So like that makes sense.
that
Yeah.
was that's yeah that's
Um,
just the
Dex does not have a region, by the way, Tom. So
oh
it doesn't make sense to have regions. They don't really matter in a game like Hearthstone.
Yeah.
no, I know it doesn't matter, but it used to. So maybe it's something that is with the premium. I don't know.
Gotcha.
Maybe
Gotcha.
that's
It
That's
might
the
have
with
some
paid
additional
option.
functionality.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's with HS Replay. Donkey doesn't do that as far as I know.
Would you
So
go?
Oh,
there's another.
it used to.
How far back do you guys typically go when you do like the data? Like how long were we using? Or do you go back all the way to like 2 weeks or?
So
Go ahead.
I wanted to cover that next too, actually. It depends on what you're looking for, right? So if you have heard about a recent development, right? If you want to look at recent developments and see how things are developing on ladder, this doesn't actually mean where the meta is going, because it could be very cyclical. But sometimes a new deck shows up and you want to see how it does the last few days. The best way to do it is to look at the past 3 days to the past week, right? Depending on how long those new decks have been around. If you're not really looking for them, you just want the best of the best. You want the longest amount of time between the current day and the most recent patch possible. In this case, it's the past 2 weeks. So we should use that.
Okay.
And
I dropped my
related to
profile
this,
because
oh,
we
sorry.
have such a
Go ahead.
my window is like, and this is kind of the problem we have with Wild, right? Like the data is actually like relatively small sample sizes unless we mess around with like minimum games. So if like we're looking for 1,000 games and like that's our benchmark, there aren't many decks that are actually getting caught and recorded if we're going back such a short amount of time.
Right, exactly. That's what I was going to say. If you want, if you're going to play with the time frame, let's say past day, this is probably not going to show anything at 1,000 games. So what you can do, for example, if you go for the highest amount of time, which would be the past 2 weeks, you can also use it to check if something is recently popping up as well. Because what you can do now is you go to, so this is going to show the max amount of games, right? You see CTA Paladin is at a little bit over 3,000 games. You can now click, I believe, on the popularity number.
I can.
Yeah,
Ooh, look at
click
that.
there.
Yeah.
So now it's going to show you what deck, not necessarily by, now it's not by win rate, but by popularity. And now you can go to minimum games.
Oops.
And click on, let's say, minimum games 250 to give you like a number. Now click on the popularity again, so it goes from minimum to highest. If it decides to work, just scroll down then if it's not working.
Oh yeah, I'll just scroll down.
Okay, so what we can see as well, if you do a little bit of meta analysis, is you can assume a deck that is under, let's say, 500 games is either something that is recently popping up, or it is something that is really just not popular. Now we see that there are 300 games
Are
of
you
Highlander
saying
Death
that
Knight.
Highlander Death Knight at 303 games is not the Stone Cold Nuts meta breaker that everybody is expecting it to be?
That we can do even better than that. So what we can do now is we know that there are 300 games of Highlander Death Knight in the past 2 weeks. What we can do now is filter this for the last, let's say, last week or last 3 days, and we can see if those 300 games happen in the last 3 days or
Gotcha.
happen in the last. I think you need to change the minimum games again, maybe.
Still
No,
250.
it's still up to 50.
I could do
Okay, so
let's say 100.
well, you can do 100.
I actually think it's more telling. It's almost more telling that it's still not showing up. So that's telling us that there
which
weren't
means
many
that
Highlander DKs tried. When they were being tried, it was probably beginning of the expansion when the new cards came out, and the win rate wasn't great, and it didn't stick around very long, right? Like that's how I would reinterpret that situation. If it's still not showing up even
exactly,
after this.
exactly, that's what we do when we look at data this way. So you can do the opposite, where you now look at a deck that has a fairly decent win rate, but it has a low game match, like let's say even shaman
Even
for
Shaman's been like right,
old
like that's been
sakes.
a deck that I've seen has kind of popped up, and there's a couple of people that I know are like habitual Even Shaman players that are higher than what I would expect them to be. Like I'm playing against Tornado, and Tornado's ranked like 600 right now, and I'm like, how? But the
Yeah,
win rate's hovering a little bit above 500, and you know that
right.
it's
And
been recent
what we
too.
can do is, if we change, so we know that if we have 120 games in the last 3 days, you can just do 120 divided by 3. That gives you around how many? 40 games a day. So we can go for the last week, and we should see what would that give you? 7 times 40. That's 280, right? So even Shaman should have. There we go. So that means that this is a deck that has been played fairly stable, right?
Mm-hmm.
It didn't have any spike on the amount of games, but
So,
that is
not to interrupt.
basically.
Um, there's an easier way to tell this, actually.
What would you do,
Oh, I know,
Andrew?
You can look at the
uh,
percentage. You can look at the meta percent. So as we see, even Shaman was 0.6% before. Now it's 0.5%.
Hmm.
It's pretty similar. So that means that it's been stable throughout, right? That's how you can tell what you're describing. Just look at the percentages, depending on the time spans. You can tell if a deck is getting more popular, less popular, or kind of stable. At a caveat, at these low sample sizes, I wouldn't pay too much attention to win rate because there's high
But it
variance
went
even
up
with.
0.1%, right? Like that's that seems like that's a little low. It is
yeah,
interesting.
and knowing how much some people play per day, 100 games is not that much.
It is
If you
interesting that so would you look at the fact that the win rate, if we go out, okay, like again, even Shaman being our case study. You go out the past week, even Shaman is sitting at like almost like a 47% win rate. But if you go just past the last 3 days, like percentage wise, it jumps up a fair amount. It's over 500 now. You wouldn't, because the sample size of games is too low. You wouldn't really think too much of that, or is that something where you'd say, there's something in the meta that it might be finding a little bit joy playing into or something.
The
at
sample
this
size
low
is,
percentage, yeah, I wouldn't.
Wouldn't think anything.
yeah,
So like the win
it's
rate, the win rates, which we can again, so even the win rates you're saying at the low sample sizes that we're looking at, you really can't be like, but HSguru says this is the best deck, and hold up the win percentage and like win an argument on Discord with that, just because like we'd need to be looking a little bit more along when you look at the popularity, the sample sizes up towards the top. Like how many games do you start like believing in a deck as far as win rate goes? Where you think that it's stable enough that you know a deck.
so it depends on the win rate, and it depends on the number of games.
Hmm.
The higher the amount of games, the more confident I am in its win rate. If I have a low confidence, but it's a ridiculously high win rate, then I'm still going to have my eye on it because even if it's not that close in win rate, the win rate can still be super high. Like if I see a 65% deck with, I don't know, 300 games, right, at these ranks, top 1K where I play, I'm going to be paying attention to it a little bit and seeing why it's doing so well because something is going on there, right? It's not going to drop 15% usually in the next 850 games to get to 1,000 games.
Yeah.
By the way, as a baseline, just for everyone to know, at around 1,000 games, there's a variance of about 1% on a deck's win rate.
Okay, that's what I was
Just
looking
for
for.
reference.
That's what I was looking for. Like, is there like a golden number that you're looking for that once you statistically you see it sort of pass a certain threshold, you're like, all right, so after this point, we kind of know what a deck is. We're going to get a good sample size. So around 1,000 games is what you're looking at.
Around 1,000
This
games, I can
just
say with 95% confidence about a plus or minus 1%
AKA about
win rate.
3 days for Tom.
Yeah, that just boosted my confidence tremendously because I remember that May, so almost a year ago, I think that I played like 1,200 games in a month, which made the stats. I think the win rate was like 60, 56, 58% win rate
Right.
with egg.
And it was
So the deck was busted.
yeah, but it was almost
It
like
was
it was almost like you could argue it was almost like not bad data, but it was like it was tainted in a way because it was only if it was only a couple pilots, you being the vast majority of it, and you playing it so well was basically telling like you could only learn so much from it because like well of course a really good pilot if the the deck can be really good, but you could be overperforming. You could be carrying the deck to a certain extent. That might not filter down to worse players.
right, but the problem is that it looked tremendously fake when you look at the stats because if you look at a deck and you see 1,000 games, as NHL is saying, you're like, oh, this definitely has like at least like that number show you 6% of the players are playing this, and it was like 3 people, and I was like 99% of the data. So the popularity was stupidly low, but the but the amount of games was stupidly high. So yeah, I know that I screwed with the data, and HS Replay was the one that was showing the dumbest numbers on my end at least.
That's a thing that we also need to look out for
Mm.
with these things. Sometimes you'll get a deck that, is basically a flavor of the week. And depending on what population is playing it, it could look a lot better or a lot worse than it is. Okay, usually it looks a lot better than it is because a certain subset of highly skilled players are playing it.
I'm looking at
Prime
APM
example of
Draka
this.
Rogue right now as like the deck that I'm aware of as being maybe something that's a little bit inflated because this is picked up in popularity, and not only is it picked up in popularity, I think the stat that I saw is like there were a third of top legend across at least the Western servers were Draka Rogue cheaters. So like they might be using well, we know they're cheating. Like the ones that were cheating have admitted to it in DMs and other ways you can tell. But like this win rate could be inflated by people playing Draka with an extra little program running.
Yeah, the way that you can do that is instead of switching the time frame, you switch the ranks. So a flavor of the deck, a flavor of the week deck should have a higher win rate the lower it goes
Yeah.
on the
That's
ladder, but it should be such a difference that it should be obvious that people don't know what is going on. And then you switch back the dates after, of course, the flavor ended, and you should see stabilize because it would have more games, and then you enter into that thing that NHL said with the 1% difference of the win rate, and you should see it still being higher at lower ranks, but more so stabilized with the normal curve any deck usually has.
Gotcha.
So what we should expect to see with Draka Rogue, if the top players are cheating and the low players have not access to the cheats, is that Draka Rogue should be like, yeah.
it should do worse relatively compared to other decks.
Mm. Okay, so it
In
was
this case, it's
so
going higher.
it moved down the list as far as popularity goes. So let's sort by should we sort by win rate then to pick up if what you guys are saying, because this isn't straight up, right? Like because I dropped to Diamond through Legend past 3 days, and Draka Rogue's win rate the number got bigger, but it was only getting bigger by a couple percentage. So I don't even know if that's like even something to really pay too much attention to, as far as like it went from 54 to 56, right? Like I don't know if that's the nuts. By the way, it's being overtaken by Highlander Death Knight, guys. You should clearly be playing Highlander Death Knight, not APM Dracarogue. What what do you guys gather from changing these filters, or am I not changing them the right way to see what I should be seeing?
Because Diamond to Legend is going to include out of Legend as well. Diamond is still high enough. I would do all, and we're still looking at the last 3 days.
What are you going to say, NHL?
So I want to bring this up. It's an APM deck. It's still going to have some skill level, right? Because you need to figure out the combo and you need to execute it properly. While we do agree collectively that there are a lot of cheaters up at higher ranks, we already see that there's a skill gap in Dracarogue, right? It doesn't see the drop in win rates from Diamond to Legend compared to top 1K that a lot of other decks see, right? We were talking about Exodia Paladin earlier, I think.
Yeah, Exodia Paladin is like crazy. Look, it's 59 here. I'm just going to do top 1K real quick. And now Exodia Paladin is 40. It's there aren't as many people playing it, right? We only had 100 games in the last 3 days. 42.2 in the last 3 days versus if we do Diamond through Legend, it's looks like one of the best decks in the meta at 59%. Like that's a crazy jump.
Yeah, and also a huge difference in popularity as well.
Yeah,
where we have 2.2%, and it drops to under 1% in Legend the past 3 days. It really shows that the deck just drops off once you reach Legend. People are dropping the deck, one, because it doesn't win as much, and two, because it's low skill, it's very linear, it's very boring, so it's not the kind of thing that people want to play.
Also, wait, what is standard Ashmain Rogue?
That is just a standard deck.
0% popularity.
That's like a tier 1.5 standard deck. It's like a Thief Rogue, Tom, but with a little bit more tempo. Am I describing it correctly, NHL?
Oh, it's the one with the 2/3 that you bounce and summon things.
Yeah, I would say it's a bit more aggressive. It's an aggressive deck, and then you have Ashmain as an emergency button at the end of the game against value piles if you need it.
Gotcha. It's like an Amathul and a Shadow Priest kind of list. It's like, but so is it built more in that vein, or is it a little bit more mid range than that? I don't know if there's anything super aggressive. I played Pirate Rogue for a little bit in Standard, and I even felt like I wasn't really being aggressive unless I had the right hand until like turns 3 through 5 is really when I made most of my hay. It felt really weird actually trying to play quote unquote aggro in Standard.
Yeah, aggro is much slower in Standard than it used to be, so that checks out.
Yeah. Okay.
But
So
I don't know.
Here we run into. Sorry, go ahead.
No, this data basically says, Dracarogue, we see it's 0.9% in all of Diamond through Legend, which means it's not really being played a ton, right? But if we go back to top 1K, I believe that went up, right? It was a more popular deck.
Where is
it? 5%.
Yeah, 5%.
Yeah.
And that's a huge, like, it's holding its win rate too, by the way.
Yeah, so
which tells me that the one, it takes skill to play. And we already know that it's a simple combo, right? And there are cheaters with it. So if we look, if we had premium, we would be able to look at top 100. And the win rate would probably hold too, which is very strange for a deck like this. Because in Wild, where there's a lower population, you should be able to see skill gaps. Right? It's very difficult to tell because Wild has such low sample sizes. We wouldn't be able to use past few days for this.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
you'd still see Dracarogue pretty high up. And obviously we know that there are a lot of cheaters there, so it's clearly because they're cheating. So that tells me skilled players are also cheating with this to improve their win rate.
Unfortunately.
Now, yeah, it's a cool combo. I'm not saying every Dracarogue player is a cheater either. Like I know Boogerworm hits I think his high is 36, but he regularly hits 33, 34, which is good enough to beat a lot of decks. And especially because I think the deck itself, people sometimes forget, like, you don't have to OTK because you leave behind a board full of stuff, and you're doing the combo on turn 3 or 4. It's like there's a very few number of decks that are actually presenting some sort of solution to what the situation that Dracaro creates. But like you said,
Absolutely.
the he calls it a linear combo, but there's a lot of moving parts to the combo itself.
Hmm. Yeah, to be fair, this is not me, like calling you out or anything, but you really hate APM decks and OTK, so this is like as far as it can get from a deck that you would like play, I think.
I actually I do. I mean, listen, I play Barnes Druid. Like I played Ignite Mage. Though I guess those are more linear APM decks, right? I do like a formulaic linear APM deck. Um, but I'll play Miracle Rogues or Miracle stuff. But in general, I do have a bias against combo. That's true. That's true.
Yeah, so yeah, and this is specifically this APM is different. I think because it requires a lot of actions and then it's linear. But the first like 15 things is not linear at all. So
And
just
it's a formulaic pursuit too of little legal animation sheets. What I mean, like where you're supposed to catch the ETC, how you're supposed to catch the Tenwus.
yeah.
There's a reason why that like the best way to play Rogue is on like an artist tablet with a stylus, right? Like you can just get so much more precise on where you're clicking. That quote unquote on mobile is actually better to play the deck. I don't know. I think it's
Yeah.
I think it's cool the little iterations I'm seeing people run with it. But again, if we're gonna have, you know, maybe
No,
it has to go if
no, of
people are
course
going to
not.
be cheating doing it. Can I talk real quick about
Yeah.
Hostage Mage? Hostage Mage looks like an ass deck. Never bring this deck ever in any situation with this one. Can we talk about why Mage looks so bad, but I know there are a lot of players that consider it the best deck in the meta?
Yeah, so this is a really easy way to explain. All you gotta do is play the game,
Yeah.
and then you notice how much hate there is for Ice Block. If you look at decks later on, and you just scroll down through it, you'll see so many of them are running Secret Tech,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so everyone is hating on this deck. They have basically bullied this deck into oblivion to a sub 50% win rate.
But
It's
it's
a very
still
difficult
holding
deck to.
50% against tech with almost 1K games because it's still really popular. It's more popular than Draca Rogue.
It's more popular than
It's
Seedlock. There's still people that bitch about Seedlock, but like if we're
yeah,
looking at top
and
1K, there are more Hostage Mages than there are Seedlocks, which I think is interesting.
yeah, and the deck is also really high skill. Which I know that we're looking at 1K,
Mm-hmm.
but again, if we could look at top 100, top 200,
That win rate would go
it
up.
would be most probably because it's really high skill.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say it would go up because top 100 is its own special meta.
Yeah, that's it.
However, historically we've seen Hostage Mage is very good at keeping its win rate around the same level from Diamond to Legend compared to top 1K. But we know that it's, you know, traditionally a high skilled deck. And if you understand the deck and know how to navigate with it, you'll do very well with it, most likely. Secret tech aside.
No,
Its
that's Highlander
popularity
Mage.
its popularity percentage goes down. Its win rate does go up a little. It's back above 500 when we do Diamond
No,
through
that's
Legend.
that's
Yeah.
that's
That's
Highlander,
Highlander.
not Hostage.
I'm sorry. Oh, Highlander. Excuse me. Where's Hostage Mage? Where's Hostage Mage?
There, oh,
Uh,
there, no, up. There we go,
There
up
you
on
go.
the
Okay, it did
screen.
go up a little bit, and it's okay. So 2.6% of the ladder or Diamond through Legend is Hostage Mage, and we had what was the popularity
5%,
at top 1K? It was like
4.5.
4.5%.
Yeah,
Okay, so like you
yeah, so
have about
it's,
twice as many Hostage Mage players basically once you get to top 1K.
yeah, that signals that it's a harder deck to play. and it's a pretty attractive playstyle for people in Wild, as much as we hate on it. 4.5% is pretty respectable.
Yeah.
And it holds the win rate from 51 to 49.9, knowing that top 1K again, it has its own thing sometimes.
Keep in
Now
mind, I
there
also
was yeah, go ahead.
before you go, I also want to mention the win rates here, especially in Diamond through Legend, are inflated.
Okay. Yeah, you could
Okay.
tell. There's a big jump I'm noticing a big jump when we do Diamond through Legend.
Yeah, so because of that, there's going to be a ton of inflated win rates, and a lot of decks are going to do a lot better than they will in top 1K because things kind of flatten out at the top. That's how you know what the best decks are and such, right? I mean, it doesn't matter for this purpose because we're just trying to help someone at a specific rank get better. But in general, if you want to look at the overall big picture and where things are going to go in the coming weeks, you look at the very top.
Right.
That is where trends start, always.
All right.
Now there is something because I wanted to go into. I feel like we
You mean
have the
when you mean the
basis
very
now.
top? Sorry, 1 second to clarify. You mean like top 1K? Like we're looking at top 1K
Yes.
When we're trying to when we're talking about trends and things that we're expecting to happen. Like okay, Pirate Demon Hunter continues to be low sample size. I would almost skip Pirate Demon Hunter and go straight down to maybe one of the thicker sample sizes of Call to Arms, Draka, XL Shadow Priest, Highlander Shaman, which is like, you start getting more robust sample sizes.
I would put it to past 2 weeks right away.
Okay, past
That's
2 weeks right away if I'm looking at trends.
Yeah, that's the largest sample size.
Past
Yeah,
2
if I want
weeks,
to see
top 1K. Look, it's filtered for win. This is
Hunter.
filtered for win rates. Hunter, look at Hunt. Okay, 0.1% win rate. This is we can ignore this pretty safely, and just sort of start going down the line.
yeah, that's the best way to approach it.
Okay, cool.
Also, we are looking at minimum 100 games. What I was going to say, because we are looking at
Oh right, we're
at
sample size are big.
exactly 100 games. Here's where the funny happens, and here's how I get stupid decks for you, Movie. If you look at the URL, it shows minimum games 100. You can change that.
Right.
You can type minimum games 50. You can type minimum games 25. It's going to give scuff data, to say the very least. It's going to give like.
So I went up to the search bar.
Yeah.
I went to the URL. I've edited 100 for 25, and I've got new pop-ups. Yay, new pop-ups! They're like friends. Okay. And now we're seeing Protoss Mage with 31 games, the best deck in the format.
Yep. So this is how you get the Yogomars Hunter. Yeah, it's just awful stuff. Just awful stuff.
But this is just ideas, right? Can we get deck lists from this, or how do we start looking for deck lists?
Click on the archetype.
Click on the archetype. So this is the win rates across classes. But then how do we
look up? Up. It's just
decks. No.
Now you need to play with the things again. So minimum 50. I think it was showing like that. It's going to be.
We did 25 earlier.
Yeah, you did 25.
Bruh.
It was past 2 weeks.
Past 2 weeks.
Right.
Wild.
No, that's the same.
So this part,
5 hours ago.
this part requires a premium account.
Notice available. Maybe try one of the highlighted ones. Okay.
No, it's not for the premium. It's because we picked a deck that really had no games.
It had 80.
So, yeah.
Okay, let's go
Yeah,
back.
but the
Let's try a
problem is
different
that
one.
because of how the stats are renewed.
Got you. So does that tell me that it's been fairly recent that we've had 80 games of Jormungandr Hunter out of 50? If it's past 2 weeks, but the data's not loaded yet.
I mean, you can click again on Jokerman's Hunter, and instead of going to Dex, go to card stats. Let's see if there's anything here.
So we're gonna want to lower the min mole count and min drawn count quite a bit.
Yeah.
What do you want me to lower it to?
Put mole count to 0. We don't care about mulligans. We're looking for cards. Min drawn count. I mean, we're gonna set it to 0 because we don't know what's being played right now, and this is super low sample.
Okay.
So we need as much as possible. From here, I would do show counts. So you see, don't show counts.
Yes.
Yeah, we want to show counts.
Okay.
And now we have drawn count. So since this is all super low sample, we're just trying to build a deck, right? We're gonna go to drawn count, and we're gonna sort by that. So the most likely decks usually run these cards, even though there's not a ton, right? We don't know what's in the deck, but that's okay. We know that these cards are drawn often, which means whoever's playing your Munger Hunter, they're probably playing these cards.
Okay.
So we know they're playing Dirty Rat, they're playing Serpent Plume, they're playing Spirit Poacher, and so on.
Okay.
Usually you can make some rough deck list out of this. It may not be perfect, but
I mean,
it's
you're
still a
saying
deck.
may not be perfect. We are talking about viewer decks here.
We're talking about viewer decks. We're talking about our. We're talking about homebrew, right? So like you could go down the line and do like do. Dirty Rat is a little bit of a fringe case, though, right? We're keeping it in the mulligan fairly often because we're assuming one type of deck. But it doesn't shock me that it has horrible mulligan stats, just because it's like, you know, you keep it because you think it's like this one deck, and you gotta play it. You gotta have your Dirty Rat if you're going to have a chance of winning. But that doesn't mean once it soon be. How often does it soon become clear that it wasn't the deck you're expecting, and you may win, you may lose, but it's having like no mulligan impact.
Yeah, but the stat you're talking about is the kept count, which is actually the same as, I believe, trouble mechanic. We are looking at drawn count. It's just how often you draw.
Well, I was looking at mull impact of a negative 30.4 as like a.
Oh.
That looks pretty bad.
We can't read into that.
What?
Nah, we can't read into that at all. We've only done 6 times.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, it's a super low sample. Mulligan impact and drawn impact are not what we're trying to do here. We're looking for super low sample stuff. So there's no point in trying to figure out what card is good, what card is bad. We're just trying to build whatever deck is missing.
Got you.
Right
okay,
now.
So this is like we're playing forensics here. We are not. We're trying to put together the what the deck is looking like, with the low sample sizes. Got it.
Yeah, and what you can do here is, especially when you're looking at top 1K, if we are not looking for silly decks, but we want to know what people are playing, and sometimes the deck is too new, and as we saw, there was a deck that just said under, it didn't have any specifications. When you click on it and you filter with the cards and whatnot, we can try to figure out, is it Rhino Hunter? Is it a Tempolist? What is this mystery hunter that popped up here, because it has low sample size and we cannot compile. I mean, we don't get a deck, but we can compile one from the card stats.
Gotcha.
That's
you can kind of put
idea,
you can kind of put a deck together based off of this work. All right, cool.
And the idea is that what you could do is go to the cards tab on HSguru, and you could look at what cards are good. I believe that's on decks.
Utilities. So if I go to cards.
Utilities, cards. Is it that? No, that's not the one. Go to maybe metas or decks. No, meta not. Decks. Nope. Oh, I know which one. It doesn't matter. When you can go back, you can click on a card and we can see that click on a card.
I'll click on Serpent Bloom.
Yeah, and we should have find decks at the top. Yep. Okay.
Okay, we're never getting there. Let's do like
this is right. This is decks, and what you can do basically here is go back.
Oh, look at
There we
that.
go.
Okay. So this is like if we wanted to find like a single, like, hey, we know it plays this key card. Let's go find different builds that we've seen with, like, we'll do top 1K. Oh no, past week, past 2 weeks.
Past 2 weeks.
Okay, so there's been
Yep.
really 2 lists that we're looking at.
And what is really bad. But basically, this also gives you the what is the word? This gives you access to something even more dumb, and this is for like general population, for quests. Like
Yeah.
when you have to play a deck that says where you have the dumb quest that says you have to play an old god, and you're like, damn, what do I play? You can go to include cards right next to archetype.
Okay.
And in this case, you see Seventh Bloom is selected.
Yeah.
Right? If you
Oh, and
unclick
so
it, it's just going to show whatever.
so this is
And
if I wanted to find a deck list that also includes the card that I type in.
yeah, so for example, if you click, in this case, because there are only 2 decks, it's not going
I'll
to.
pick a popular card. Let's say Wild Spirit, right?
Yeah,
Okay. So it's in
I think both.
both decks have it. Okay. So what's a deck? What's a card? So one has
Yeah.
Zephyrus, one doesn't. So let's say we want to do Zephyrus the Great. Okay.
Okay, there we go. So if you reset all the filters, this is also how I get decks for you that has unplayable cards. That this is how when I ask like
Got
name me a
you.
card and I will give you a deck.
Got you. So
You,
so what you're doing like all.
yeah, I'm doing all.
Okay.
You can keep that 2 weeks. Any class, opponent class doesn't matter. Minimum games,
Okay. And then
win rate.
how do I reset these? I just click on the.
Yeah, you can click on them.
Okay, that deselects it. Cool. Okay. So let's do a stupid card. I don't know. What's stupid? Do we want to do Cho?
I think Cho may be too popular. Let's do something like
Can we do
what's a good
Ursoc?
card?
Ursoc? Sure.
Umbra. Umbra is also like what is
Ursoc.
Ursoc?
Oh, look at
Oh,
this.
I know which one is. Okay.
So we've got a Highlander that's using Ursoc. We've got actually with minimum of 50 games. We actually got a pretty fair sample size.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun.
Oh.
Like no, this is and this is me speaking directly to chat. If you have an idea of a deck or a card you want Shmoopy to play, instead of, and especially if you don't have perhaps all the cards, do this and then switch a couple cards. You are most likely going to find something better suited at whatever trash you can come up with.
It's true. It's kind of true. These feel like, looking at these are not unfortunately built. Like obviously this one's a standard deck, right? But like, some of these look actually like not half bad as far as like, oh, look at the funny deck I found. This also looks like a standard deck. Oh yeah, this is a standard deck.
That
many of these are standard decks actually just being played in Wild. I don't think like at low MMR. I don't know if people realize like how many standard players just take their standard deck and just play it in Wild at low MMR and kind of like.
Oh, Filterphobia says an interesting thing on chat. You can also use it to exclude cards. So, for example, if you want to see a deck that includes Ursol, not Ursoc, but doesn't include Uther, you need to unclick Ursoc.
but doesn't include
And
I'd be very
Uther.
impressed.
Uther,
Yeah,
right?
I'd be
So
very
no
impressed if
Uther.
you ran a deck that included Ursol and Ursoc.
Listen, you don't know what I get up to, okay?
That is all standard until the 12th deck, which actually has a 55% win rate, which is Front the Lines.
Aren't these? Oh, instead of
Which is-
Rivendare. Ooh, look at this. Rivendare Paladin.
That is the only wild deck, by the way.
Yeah, I
All of the
realized
other
that.
ones are
I'm like,
started.
I went down. I was like, there's no more.
So
Nutty.
yeah, you can actually find really weird stuff.
So then you
Because
send
this
this
also
shit to me,
helps.
and then I'm like, fuck, I gotta play it. And then so I have to play it, and then we throw it out there and we see what happens with it.
No, I think it doesn't look that bad, and again, it has a 55% win rate.
It looks atrocious. I don't know what you're talking about, but you know what? It's kind of okay. How do I play the front lines? I'm waiting for
You don't. You just got it.
Don't I just like I just sit here and die, don't I? Like I need Nas if I'm gonna do this and be serious
You're on
about it.
Lumia and Sleepy Resident and Timeout. You
It's
don't.
EP Paladin. Come
You
on.
don't see.
He's
You don't
fucking
see it.
EP Paladin. Jesus.
Look,
Alright.
if you want, I'll submit EP Demon Hunter to you. I don't know if I showed you that list.
You did show me that list. It was cursed.
But
I'm gonna give you a
the-
whole carousel of EP decks for the next stream.
All right. Last little bit I want to include. Are there any other tips or tricks? So we've looked at how to look at decks with a critical lens. We're not just like HS guruing and driving, right? Like because that's irresponsible. We sort of looked at the deck data and how to filter deck data and sort of to get a little bit more of an impression of what a deck's doing, not just accepting the win rate as like gospel, right? And moving forward from there. We've looked at how to find some underplayed decks and then also sort by cards that they're including. Any other we've shown how to manipulate the URL so you get some scuffed data, but you can get below these sample sizes that are default so that you can get some juicy, some spicy stuff on the bottom end. Is there anything else that we should be looking at before I call this quits?
So there's two things I think. One's quick and one is less quick. Can we go back to the meta tab?
Sure.
Twist Lemao.
So we don't have to discuss too much and play with the tabs here for me to explain this. Everyone talks about win rate all the time, right? But win rate isn't everything. If you want to climb, that's all you care about. You just want to get to legend as quickly as possible. Ignore the win rate stuff. Organize it by climbing speed. The reason why this is important is because a fast aggro deck will usually be faster than a super slow controlled deck, even if its win rate is lower. Why? Because you get more games in.
Yeah.
And that's important. So you're going to want to use that if that's your only goal. If you want to win, then keep win rate. If you don't care, then look through this however you want. But if your only goal is climbing, pay attention to climbing speed.
So the fastest climbing deck, it looks like then, would be Call to Arms Paladin, just based off of not only do we have the highest climbing speed, obviously, which is pretty good, but the win rate's toward the top. It's not as good as Libram Paladin, even without any of the normal filters that we would put in to make this give us a little bit more of an honest perspective on which deck is better. Because I think if we did top 1K, Libram Paladin drops, Call to Arms Paladin jumps, sure does, but it still looks like it's the fastest deck to climb with, based off of the sample sizes that we've got.
Yep. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is pick an archetype, any archetype that you're interested in. The more popular, the better.
Let's do Holy. Is Holy Wrath Paladin too much of a mess?
No.
Okay.
That works.
Let's do Holy Wrath Paladin.
All right. So let's go to card stats.
Yeah. I knew we were going here.
Yeah. So let's turn on counts. Show counts.
Show counts.
Perfect. Now, when optimizing a deck, okay, you're gonna want to look here specifically, because like sometimes there are cards that that's you're not too comfortable with, and you wonder why. Um, the only one that sticks out as a little weird to me right now is the Ceaseless Expanse. Now you may be wondering, that's weird. Its drawn win rate is way higher than everything else. Let me see. Usually when we're drawing the Ceaseless Expanse, it's because we're playing Holy Wrath. So we're basically playing it and using it as a win con.
Yeah.
We know that's the win con already. But that's not what we're here for. We're looking to see what the most important cards are, right?
Question.
And what?
Also, the drawn win rate. It doesn't shock me the drawn win rate is high either. Would that be picking up on the games when you, let's say, do Order in the Court, Finley, and then later Dredge and win with Ceaseless Expanse? Would that also be caught up in the drawn win rate?
Yes.
Okay. So like doubly so, Ceaseless Expanse is going to have basically there's two patterns of play. Every time you win a game with Ceaseless Expanse using that particular play pattern, it's I'd imagine it's adding to the stats for the drawn impact. So or the drawn impact. Okay, cool. Sorry, continue.
So let's order by drawn impact first. These all have a good sample size, right? A few thousand games. It's pretty good. So usually, when you see 0.5% drop, then we can comfortably say that card is worse. Holy Wrath Paladin is a little weird too, because since we're often ordering our deck, that means higher cost cards are usually going to be better. Right? And we see that with, Ceaseless Expanse, obviously.
Right.
Right? So we know the most important cards here are the Ceaseless Expanse because it's a win con, or Keeper Polka and Holy Wrath. What do you know? Our win con is at the top. Right? So then it's just a matter of figuring out what other cards are good. Right? And looking at this, we're going through, and we see little drops here and there as we go down. And then we get down to stuff like Enter the Colosseum, right? Enter the Colosseum is minus 5.7 on a drawn impact. So if we draw Enter the Colosseum, then we have a 5.7% lower win rate on average. Okay? It is not good to draw. We lose more often.
Oh, is that what this is? This is how it hits your win rate. Okay.
Yes, that is what it does.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Okay, cool.
So if you look, it's about 1.5% lower than the next card.
Yeah, metal detector.
So we already know. Sure. We already know. Like, if we have to make a cut from our deck, say this is our deck list, Enter the Colosseum is the first card to go.
Okay.
We need a very good reason to run it. Okay. Usually those kinds of cards are run as like meta calls, and you can see it under the opponent tab when we mess with the classes. These things will shift, and you'll be able to figure out where cards matter.
Like, let's say versus Warlock.
Yes. So I'll
do two.
Need to lower the mulligan. Yeah, 2 weeks is good. Let some of the mulligan count to 0 because we're not paying attention to mulligan right now.
Okay. And mulligan count to 0.
Mulligan count only matters if we're trying to figure out what to keep.
Okay.
Okay. So where's our drawn count? We need our drawn count higher because this is way too low.
Okay, drawn count. Sorry, min drawn count is.
Let's do 800 or 1600. Let's try 800.
Okay.
Is it there? Nope. 400. All right.
200 is a little closer. We found Enter the Colosseum. So against Warlock, it actually has a positive mole impact, which
filter by drawn impact.
Oh, we're doing by drawn impact. Sorry.
Yeah, we're still doing by drawn impact, and we're looking. It gets a little better, so we know that it's more for this game, even though the sample size is very low. Right.
I picked Warlock because they play giants, and Enter the Colosseum would be good into a giant deck. Just for people who are watching,
right.
Like, why did I pick Warlock specifically? So I expected Enter the Colosseum the performance to jump a little bit, specifically because of that matchup.
And we can also see it by increasing our sample size. So instead of just top 1K, we know seed lock is very common outside of Legend too. So let's just do Diamond through Legend and see how it compares there.
Okay.
Right. And
Where's enter? Still towards the bottom, and we do it by drawn impact.
yeah, so it's not great, but let's compare it to the just all opponents now in Diamond through Legend. And it should go down more.
It did.
I believe.
Yeah, it did.
Yes. Yes, so that's how we know.
Sorry, it goes down respectively, but if you look at percentage-wise, it went up from what we were looking at the top, which means that this also is giving us information about the meta without us looking at the meta tab, because we know that Enter the Coliseum loses its value when you're playing in higher metas, because as you were saying, I pick Warlock because they play giant boards. This card functions for that, which means that at higher ranks, people are not playing giant boards.
They're not playing right. They're not playing for board as hard as, let's say, lower down. Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, you would expect it to be good against something like, say, the Abraham Paladin too, but it's a bit weird because we're only doing by class. It's very difficult to tell.
Yeah.
So
but in general, those are cards near the bottom are usually meta calls, and they're much more flexible spots.
Yeah, I could see someone looking at this data and jumping to wildly the wrong conclusion, but making a justification that sounds good to try and explain what they see. Like there's more to this than just what I'm trying to say is there's more to this than just sorting by like, all right, well, let's just find our best mulligan impact, let's just find our best kept impact or whatever, and just being like, all right, well, these, the top cards are our best cards. It reminds me a lot of like stats in baseball, right? Like certain players having certain oddities in their stats, and like, knowing how they play their game, how it ends up impacting, and figuring out, well, this person hits a lot of balls and they land at this particular location. If you move them to a different stadium, those would be home runs versus doubles, or those would be home runs versus flyouts. So like that, I'm trying to say that this is a little bit more extensive and there's a lot of homework behind this.
Yeah, there's one other nuance here that I could see. If we go near the top, we'll see Nozdormu the Timeless.
Yeah.
Okay. Very low sample size, but it does well here.
It does.
Right? Kind of interesting. Normally we would ignore that, right? Here's the catch. Do you know another deck that Nozdormu the Timeless sees play in?
Exodia Paladin.
Or I was thinking Highlander Paladin, because it's very similar.
Yeah. That's true.
Usually in Highlander Paladin, you're playing the Holy Wrath as win condition too.
Yeah, sure.
So if we go to Highlander Paladin and we look at the stats on Nozdormu there, because it's such a similar deck, we can kind of compare and kind of extrapolate, hey, maybe Noz is good in a similar deck too. Right? We would obviously need a higher sample to be sure of it.
Do you want to go check?
Testing.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go check.
So let's go to. I'm going to go to meta. I'm going to go to wild.
You can just go back.
Nah, because going back means it's going to go through the tab. So
go to Highlander Paladin. Go to cards. Right.
Yep, card stats.
Card stats. I'll click the two pop-ups I can kill.
Let's show counts.
Show counts, and then. Min count, do we want to do... That was a really... Do we want to do 800 for the minimum count?
Sure. Right. Sure. And let's see drawn impact. So let's sort by drawn impact.
Okay. Now Storm of the Timeless.
And where is...
Right here.
Yeah, so it's pretty good here too. Right? And all the cards above it are the win condition cards, right? We see Ceaseless, we see Lordkeeper Polecat, we see Holy Wrath, and we see some people go for Uther too.
Yeah.
We're not, so we can ignore that. And then we see the Highlander cards, right? The good ones.
Yeah.
Reno and Zeph. So right below that is Noz, and that tells me, hey, if Nas works in a deck with Holy Wrath as a win condition in the Highlander version, maybe it could be good in the duplicate Holy Wrath version too.
So you would look at a card
So you can,
just to sorry to if I'm jumping ahead of the queue. So then like looking at something like, hey, looks like our Enter the Coliseum is dog shit. Let's cut Enter the Coliseum. Let's slot in Nars Dormu the Timeless, which is not something I would typically see in 30 or 40 Holy Wrath lists, and see if that actually ends up being impactful. Right? Is that where we're kind of going with this?
yeah, it's something that warrants exploration. We can't say for sure if it's good or bad because we don't have the sample size in that specific archetype.
Yeah.
However, in a similar archetype, there's data that suggests that it is good there. So maybe it can also apply somewhere else.
And here's where the other tab that we were looking at comes into play, where you can look for a deck that runs Nosdormu and Holy Wrath.
Right. Right.
And we could see if there are stats for a deck that does both, even if the sample size is low, and if the win rate already looks promising, although we know that it's probably going to be inflated, we know that, okay, here's a list. What did they cut? What's like...
Yeah, who's already
what
been
are
trying
they...
it, and what has their deck list success rate looked like? And you know, if it's noticeable, that tells you that one of the reasons could be, but isn't necessarily rely on Nas, but it could be the inclusion of Nas making the deck more streamlined in some way. This is what you guys are doing when you're nerding out. You're like, I could get sucked into this. Because I get, ADHD brain go burr, and I was never medicated, so I could get sucked into like looking through some stuff like this and trying to troll through and seeing what I could pick out.
Again, it definitely matters on your rank. It matters your rank matters for this because your mileage may vary, and not every rank is created equal.
No.
That said, you can usually see trends, and you can kind of put the pieces together, and then sure, something might be a reach, but if you have something to back yourself up, then maybe you can give it a try and see where it goes.
Yeah.
Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. We don't know until you try.
What I think it's interesting is that even so you can try hard, like insanely hard with the stats here, right? And even more so if you had premium, and even 3 times as much if you played standard instead of wild, because again,
bigger sample sizes, more people like sending in the data. Yeah,
exactly. But you can also you can put yourself on a middle ground and use this for, hey, I have this homebrew I want to perfect. Which cards within this class, within this kind of archetype that I'm trying to build, would make sense here? If you're someone that may not have the time, and this is going to just calling myself out, to test one card 100 times and then switch it for another card and test it 100
I remember you saying
times.
that you really didn't like changing a card until after you played like 20 games or something like that, because you didn't feel like you got a feel of a card for it was like 25 games, if I'm remembering correctly, right? Like you really like a large sample size. Me, I can play something like 3 or 4 times and like I can get I feel like I get a fairly confident feel of like, man, I don't really like this, or I do like this. And there's a lot of mid cards I think I have a bad I think my weakness as a deck builder personally is I end up settling too soon. I kind of accept kind of middling cards too quickly, because if I find my deck is functioning properly, my standards are a little too low, and I'm like, I have a tough time refining that, like taking a deck from scratch and bringing it up to fully refined. I might take something that somebody already built and be like, well, this is how I would change it. But that's a little bit different than what we're talking about, where we're building from the studs up, basically.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that you could do this. This is how I would change it, but I'm gonna base myself a little bit more on hard data than feel,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And also for the record, since we're here, all of us three, the only version of Egg Hunter after I don't know how many games that had less than 50% win rate, it was one that NHL suggested, and it was ass.
Thanks, Tom.
It's there's only one version, and I still have on the tracker. You know how many versions of the deck there were? There were 26.3 version of the deck, and there is only one version that had less than 50% win rate. It was your idea, and it was trash. I think it was only one lion. I don't know why I follow your advice. It was trash.
Because I was trying to big priest the deck. What do you mean?
It was
We were
such a
doing
bad idea. It was such an awful idea.
All right.
Okay,
we were
I'm
doing the
saying
big priest thing.
Personal bickerings over a dead deck aside. Anything else we should do on here, or is this a good place to call a wrap?
yeah, I was just going to add. So you have the try hard, you have the middle ground, and then you have the silly side, which is what we try a little bit, which is like I want to see a deck that runs Ursol, but it's not an Uther deck, and you can also do that, and then you can move yourself from there and be like, okay, I found this. Now I can perfect this that I found here with more stats that are also here. So you can find things that otherwise you wouldn't come across. I mean, you would because you check
I
what
play a
Pyramid
lot of
Head
crap.
posts, but I'm talking about more of the general population. You
Right.
find so much shit, like, to be honest. That's on you, man.
Okay. Cool.
But yeah.
All right. All right. I'll stop it here then. Thank you so much, NHL fan and Tom Carter, for coming on and doing this tonight. I meant to do this much earlier in the year when it looked like Tempo was, we knew the Tempo boys were packing it in, and not that I was going to start doing necessarily. I don't think I want to do tier lists and get pinned down on tier lists the same way like KVLT and Maxi get together and they put out a good one. But I do like putting together like good decks and decks that I like and decks that I think are functional. And this seems like tonight I feel a lot more confident in being like, okay, let's look at a list that I'm already using and look at, all right, what cards could I add to this or what cards could I do to change to this on my own time to make it better. I think that's been useful. Anything we want to sign off with, NHL, before I let you go?
Do I get a shout out?
Sure. Shout out. Go nuts.
All right. Well, I'm gonna do a little self plug, and I am going to bring up a THL Team Hearth League. So Schmoopy has been a part of it as well. He does this awesome stream with us every June, where we raise a ton of money for the Trevor Project. So Schmoopy's community is pretty involved, but we do basically team leagues where you get to play a match a week against someone of equal or similar skill. We have stuff for all formats and all skill levels, including Wild, by the way, which I'm sure a lot of you are in, being Schmoopy viewers. You get to meet a lot of new people, you get to make a lot of friends, you get to talk to people like Schmoopy in person and face them too, and it's just a lot of fun. Tom can also speak to it here. He was heavily involved, and it's a really cool place, and I hope you can take the time to join the community.
Very good. Yeah, THL
Yeah.
can't if you want more of what I showcased on like the little West versus East versus Last Dong. I had a lot of people in the comments being like, "Hey, this is cool. More of this." If you want to come and get involved, mostly the formats are standard, but there is a wild format as well, and they're always looking for players to help fill out teams. To keep it going. So if that interests you, I'll make sure I add an invite to the THL Discord in the description of this video so that you can do that. Tom, anything that you want to sign off with?
No, I think it was an excellent shout out. I'm just going to add to that. There's also content within THL, not only the tournament part, which I'm also part of. We are still figuring out the dates, but there's going to be content as well. So if you like streams, maybe you wanna look like at a fantasy league kind of stats, but for real players, we also do that as well.
Cool. All right. And if you enjoy this content, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing on my YouTube channel. Or join us at like 9 p.m., 9:30-ish East Coast U.S. time on Twitch.